So today, we're going to dive into one of the most fascinating and, let's be honest, kind of dangerous ideas from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. Welcome to our deep dive into Law 14, Pose as a Friend, Work as a Spy.
Let's just start with a question that sits at the heart of pretty much every single human interaction. Think about it. In a business deal, a team meeting, or even just a casual chat with a friend, how much of what people are telling you is the actual truth? And, maybe more importantly, what are they holding back? That gap, that space between the words they say and what they really mean, well, that's the battlefield where power is won and lost. And it's exactly that landscape that Law 14 is all about mastering.
Right. That gap is exactly where this law operates. You can almost think of it as getting your own personal cloak of invisibility. Now, I'm not talking about a trench coat and hiding in some dark alley. This is about a psychological invisibility. It's about learning how to gather incredibly important information in any social setting without anyone ever realizing you're doing anything more than just having a friendly conversation.
And here it is, the core judgment of the law itself. Now, pay close attention to that phrase, polite social encounters. Why is that so important? Well, think about it. Politeness is the perfect cover. It's the ultimate camouflage. In those settings, people's guards are down. They're expecting small talk, pleasantries. This law says you should use that relaxed, seemingly harmless atmosphere as your primary theater for gathering intelligence.
And you absolutely have to do this, because without this skill, we're all just stumbling around in the dark. People are masters at presenting a carefully polished version of themselves to the world, right? They hide their real ambitions, their insecurities, their actual plans. And if you make your moves based only on what people want you to see, well, you're not really playing the game at all. You're just a pawn in theirs. You end up constantly reacting instead of strategizing.
Okay, so to really see this principle in action, let's dig into a fantastic story from the book. And this isn't just some clever little anecdote. No, this is a total masterclass in the art of patient, long-term intelligence work. It's the story of how the world's greatest art dealer set his sights on America's richest and most fiercely private man.
So, on one side, you've got Andrew Mellon, and he's not just wealthy, the guy is a human fortress. He's known for being cold, reserved, completely impenetrable. His number one goal in life is just to be left alone. Then, on the other side, you have Joseph Duveen, the most famous art dealer on the planet. He's charming, brilliant, and he looks at Mellon not just as a potential client, but as the ultimate prize. This was truly the irresistible force, meaning the immovable object.
So, how did Duveen even begin to approach this fortress? Not with some slick sales pitch. No, he launched a multi-year spy operation. And this is so crucial. This wasn't a week of homework. For years, he just researched Mellon from a distance, building this incredibly detailed psychological profile. Then, he went a step further. He infiltrated Mellon's inner circle by secretly putting his staff on his own payroll. This gave him real-time intel, and only then, armed with all this information, did he make his move, booking a suite right below Mellon's in London and befriending his valet to set up the final act.
And here it is, the payoff for all that incredible patience. The valet tips Duveen off the exact second Mellon is leaving his room. Duveen times his own exit to perfection. They randomly meet by the elevator. Duveen acts all surprised and drops this line. Now to Mellon, this was just an incredible coincidence, a sign from the heavens that he'd met a kindred spirit. But to Duveen, it was the perfectly executed climax of a spy mission that was years in the making.
The result was an absolute checkmate. Mellon, the man nobody could get close to, was completely disarmed. He didn't see a salesman hungry for his money. He saw a fellow art lover, someone who understood his deepest passions. Mellon became Duveen's most loyal, most generous client for life. All because Duveen understood that the way into a man's fortress isn't through the front gate, it's through a hidden tunnel you build yourself, brick by brick, with shared interest and identity.
Now, that Duveen story is obviously on a grand scale, but the principles behind it, they apply to our lives every single day. So how can we actually use these ideas? Well, this next section is all about the practical techniques, your own covert toolkit for gathering information. So let's clearly define what we mean by artful spying. It's this subtle skill of guiding a conversation to get people to reveal things they had no intention of sharing. It's about asking indirect questions, sure, but really it's about listening with a third ear. You're paying attention to what's not being said, the hesitations, the little flashes of emotion, the topics they skillfully avoid. The real truth is almost always found in the silence between the words.
The great French diplomat Talleyrand was an absolute master of this. His method was basically to become a psychological blank slate. He would hide his own strong opinions, suppress his own personality, and just let other people talk and talk and talk. See, people love to fill a silence, and they really love to talk about themselves. He would casually drop these subtle, maybe slightly controversial opinions, what he called a transparent veil of insinuations, just to see who would react, and more importantly, how they'd react. He'd even organize a friendly card game, not for fun, but as an intelligence mission, just to see how people acted under the tiniest bit of pressure.
Okay, but what if you need more than just a general feel for someone's personality? What if you need to find out something specific, something that they are actively trying to hide? For that, there's a much more advanced and, a much more manipulative technique.
It's called the false confession, and it works by tapping into this really powerful psychological trigger called the reciprocity bias. When someone seems to make themselves vulnerable and shares a secret with us, we feel this almost unstoppable urge to share something back. So by sharing a completely made-up but believable secret or weakness of your own, you create this false sense of intimacy and trust. In that moment, their guard drops, and they feel this powerful pull to offer up a real secret in return. You're basically trading fake vulnerability for real intelligence.
But of course, this is a two-way street. As you're learning how to gather information, you can bet that other people might be trying to do the exact same thing to you. So how do you defend yourself? This brings us to the absolutely critical countermove, creating your own bodyguard of lies. Winston Churchill understood this concept better than pretty much anyone. The best defense against a spy isn't a wall of silence. In fact, silence is often suspicious. It can reveal that you do have something to hide. No, the ultimate defense is an active one: disinformation. You don't just block them from getting the truth, you actively feed them a different story, a plausible but incorrect reality that you completely control.
During World War II, this principle literally saved thousands of lives. Germany's new V-1 bombs were hitting London hard. The British, using a network of captured German agents they had turned into double agents, started sending targeting feedback to the Germans. And here's the genius lie. They consistently sent back false data, showing that the bombs were flying too far, overshooting their targets in central London. So what did the Germans do? Believing they were making smart, data-driven corrections, they fixed their aim, which caused the bombs to fall short, landing in the less populated suburbs. By feeding their enemy the right false information, the Allies took control of their decisions.
So after all this talk about spies and deception and covert tactics, what's the real goal here? I mean, it's not about learning a few manipulative party tricks. The real point is to fundamentally change how you perceive the world. It's about developing what Robert Greene calls a third eye.
This right here, this is the true power of Law 14. This third eye is a metaphor for a much higher state of social and strategic awareness. It's the ability to see the invisible currents of power flowing through a room. It's understanding the unspoken fears and desires that are actually motivating people. It's about anticipating moves before they're ever made. It's the shift from just seeing people's masks to finally seeing the person standing behind them.
And let's be really clear about what this means in our world today. It means reading the shifting alliances in a Zoom meeting just by watching who looks at who when a certain point is made. It's understanding the real message hidden in the subtext of an email chain. It's walking into a negotiation and sensing your counterpart's actual, unspoken limits, not just the number they put on the table. It's basically a form of practical omniscience for the modern world.
And that brings us to one last and pretty difficult thought. We live in an age that celebrates radical transparency, right? Authenticity is the word of the day. And yet, this law argues that the world of power, the real world, operates by a completely different set of rules. It suggests that to navigate it successfully, and even just to defend yourself, some level of artful deception is essential. So is it a cynical betrayal of trust, or is it just a necessary tool in the complex, messy game of human interaction? That's something you'll have to decide for yourself.